Hey YouTubers, welcome back. This is another episode of Small Engines Questions and Answers for Friday, November 11th. So hopefully you guys had a great week. Winter is fast approaching and I heard that some of you guys had a bad winter storm there up in the States. Hopefully you've cleared up all the branches and all that kind of stuff. And I'm filming this in the middle of the week, and as you can see all the leaves have turned. They're pretty well all off of the trees, but it's really nice and warm today. It's 13 degrees Celsius. Which is pretty warm here for November. This is kind of odd to get nice days like this. So for this part of Canada, we should be getting snow here anytime soon. Anyways, to get in the first question today, a YouTuber asked me why won't my snowblower start? Well, I'm just going to give you a few examples of why your snowblower may not start, especially at the beginning of the season. One of the most common things is that people have bad gas in their snowblower, or it's left over from the previous season. The thing with old gas is that it's harder to ignite. Hopefully you've put fuel stabilizer in your gas to avoid that problem, but if you still have a problem, you could always drain out the old fuel and put in fresh gas. Another common thing is that people may have forgotten the fuel valve to the off position like this, and when they go to restart it, there's no fuel going to the carb, so make sure the fuel valve is on. Some snowblowers may have this valve, some may not. Now it's really rare that the spark plug's bad, but you could always check for spark. And you'd want to make sure that the key's in the blower here, because if the key's not there, you're not going to have spark. It will never start. Sometimes people take the key off in the spring and they forget to put it back in the fall, and they're wondering why it won't start. So I'll double check to make sure it's there. If you have a newer style blower with a Briggs & Stratton engine, the key will be in a different place and it will look different than this. So these are the most common problems I run across for people having a hard time to start their snowblower. If you have any other suggestions, just post them below this video in the comment section. My next question, a YouTuber has a 5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine. It's got a horizontal shaft on it, and he's wondering why he hears a little click sometimes when he turns the engine over. So it's probably an engine very similar to this one. And the click we're talking about, it's just a little click when you turn the engine over. Well, all that can be is the internal parts of the engine. If your engine is running good, then you don't need to worry about anything being bad. Sometimes what that noise can be is the camshaft rubbing against the valve lifters inside the engine, or the valves opening and shutting over here. And you'll notice the same thing on a lot of other engines, like on this snowblower engine here, you can hear different noises. So it's nothing to worry about. Like I said, if your engine runs good, just leave it the way it is. Now previously I talked about how crank seals can affect your carburetor if it's a carburetor with diaphragms like on chainsaws and weed whackers. Well, a YouTuber just emailed me and asked me if that can affect the little Toro snowblowers that have a carburetor with diaphragms in it. Well, the answer to that is yes, because carburetors with diaphragms need impulses of air from the crankcase to make the carburetor function properly. Here's a small 2-cycle engine from a Toro snow thrower. This carburetor here has a float, so if your crank seal was leaking on this engine, it wouldn't be as bad as if you have a carburetor with diaphragms. Some of these carburetors have diaphragms in them because the piece of equipment can run in any position. On the carburetors with a float, the engine has to be nice and straight. If you tilt the machine up too much, it's going to die. But if you have the one with the diaphragms, you can tilt the blower up in any position you want and it should still run. Now, if you did have a leaking crank seal, you would have oil coming out of here between the shaft and the seal. In this case, it's good, so you don't need to worry about it. But if it is leaking, whether you have a carburetor with a float or a diaphragm, you should replace the seal. Now in a previous video I posted on YouTube, I fixed the throttle lever on a leaf blower that looks exactly like this one, but it's a different color. Sometimes they'll be branded Weed Eater, like the green one here, or Poulan Pro, they're going to be yellow. Sometimes they'll be branded Craftsman, they'll be black. Now YouTuber was wondering what the model number is of this unit because he's trying to locate parts for his. Usually the model number will be on the tube over here. And here it is right there. There's the serial number, it's 25 cc's. So you would need these numbers in order to locate the proper parts for this unit. You could go to partstree.com or ordertree.com and locate a parts list there if you want. You can also contact Poulan to try to get a parts list as well for it. Now just remember, even though they're different colors, they still all have the same part numbers for them. Sometimes what they can do is a minor change from year to year, so always double check with your numbers. My last question today is one I often get, and people often email me saying that they cannot remove the wheel from their snowblower because it's fused on to the drive shaft. Well, sometimes what I'll do is heat up the wheel hub and the drive shaft to try to loosen it up. I would heat it up here, all the way around here, but if you do this, make sure to remove the little valve inside the stem here so that there is no air pressure inside your tire. This way you're being safe and you can prevent injuries. Now I would also go on the inside here and heat up this part of the hub of the wheel as well. It goes right over the shaft and it can be fused over here. So I'll heat it up really hot, like red hot. If the MAB gas isn't good enough for you, you may want to use some oxyacetylene torches or some mold carbon arc torches to do this. You may also want to spray some good penetrating oil between the hub and the shaft here in order to try to loosen it over time. You may want to leave that penetrating oil sitting there for a few days before you attempt it. And after you remove the wheel and you're going to put it back on, make sure to put some anti-seize on the shaft just to prevent the wheel from seizing on it again. To prevent injuries, the best way would be to remove the tire if you can and heat it up from the inside without the tire being there in your way. And if you had the tire off, you can access the whole hub on the inside and heat it up properly. Then you're pretty well guaranteed to get it right off the shaft. Some of these blowers, if you break the drive shaft, are no longer available, so you want to be extra cautious that way that you do not break it. Before I end off today, a YouTuber wanted to know where the air vane is for the stove. Well, it's right here. When it's pushed over here, it's letting the most air into the stove. When you push it over here, there's less air going into the stove feeding the fire. So once I get the logs burning good, I usually put this right over here so that it burns even slower. Another question I get is because it's an airtight stove, people ask me, what do you do when you light a fire in there? Well, what I do usually is I leave the door open just slightly like this to let a bit of air go in to get the wood burning nice and hot, and then I shut it and then it burns nice and slow. So I usually do this when I first light the fire and then I keep the door shut tight thereafter. And by the way, the shop's a bit of a mess right now because I'm renovating this whole wall over here. And yes, I will be making a shop tour update video soon. So again, I want to thank all you guys for watching. I want to welcome all the new subscribers to my channel. I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions, just send them to me. I can't guarantee that I will get at all the questions because I'm a bit behind. I do get a lot of emails every day, but I try my best to get at all the questions. If I miss you, then maybe try again. So have a great weekend and we'll see you next Friday.